welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about step 1 in losing weight, and that is to prioritize stress. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is. How does stress relate to weight loss? Well, there are 3 things mainly. The first one being it increases your appetite. If you have a greater appetite, you're going to be more likely to eat, and hence you're more likely to put on weight. Number 2, it causes water retention and salt retention. So if you've got more water and salt within your body, you're going to weigh more and feel bloated. And number 3 is you may tend to go towards that particular body shape when you're under a stressful situation chronically. Our bodies are designed to deal with stress in an acute manner, and then the body goes back to its normal homeostatic state. It's not designed to be chronically on. The stress response is not designed to be on constantly. There are 3 types of stresses that trigger the stress response, and it's always the same, and that is physical stress. So that might be like breaking your leg, being in a car accident, someone attacking you. There's emotional or psychological response, stress, and that might be things such as your boss putting a lot of pressure on you, or perhaps you're getting a divorce, you don't like your neighbors, your dogs are barking and you can't control them. There are so many things that could potentially be causing emotional stress in your life. The other type of stressor is biochemical. An example of this would be a lowered blood glucose level, and this would trigger a stress response as well. So unfortunately, we live in a society that is full of psychological stresses that are chronic and long term. So you get up and then you're exposed to it for long periods of time. You come home, you sleep, then you get up and you do it again. And an example might be at work. If your boss doesn't like you and you feel the attack, then you're going to be triggering your stress response, and you're going to be in that altered state during that time. You can't leave your work because you need the money. You're stuck there unless you can find another job. You can't fight and you can't run away. Another example might be a child that doesn't like going to school, that is perhaps very sensitive, and so they're stuck in a classroom with their stress response triggered because they can't choose to go out and not go to school. So there are many things that might trigger it. Okay, so let's have a look at the physiology. Let's dive deep into the physiology and see what's happening to cause those 3 things that I mentioned before. So let's pretend there is a crazy person coming towards you with a gun. Okay, you're going to see them with your eyes, you're going to hear as they come towards you, and all that information that's received by your senses is going to be processed by your brain and different areas of your brain. Eventually your hypothalamus is going to be alerted that there's danger, there's a stressor, and they're going to do 3 things. So let's write that down. So stressor, the first thing that the hypothalamus is going to do, the hypothalamus is a small area within your cell, and it's kind of towards the center of your brain. It's going to increase the sympathetic nervous system activity, and basically what that is the fight or flight response that you probably heard about a lot of the time that people say. So the job of the sympathetic nervous system in this case is to prepare you to run away from a bear, so your heart increases, the blood gets shunted to your muscles so that you can move quickly. It also has metabolic effects, and that's what we're going to look at because that's more related to weight gain. So it's also going to, because in the situation perhaps where you're having a psychological stress, in this case, with the example that I've given you of a person running away, like a person coming with a gun towards you, maybe it's not the best example. Let's change it to a psychological stressor. Say there is a very sensitive child in a classroom and the teacher was trying to talk to them. They were distracted, and then the teacher says, tells them to be quiet and to do their work, and the child perhaps interprets that in as a manner of being criticized. So it triggers their stress response. Now they're sitting in the classroom, they think the teacher doesn't like them, and they're under stress. They can't run away from it. However, their body is getting them ready to run away or to fight. So, they're going to be stuck sitting in the chair. Well, unless they hit the teacher, of course. By the way, I'm not saying to hit your teacher. So, the increased sympathetic nervous system is going to increase the release of a hormone called epinephrine. Epinephrine is the same as adrenaline, and that is going to alter your metabolism by decreasing insulin being released into the circulation, and by increasing the amount of glucagon that is released into the circulation. So what are these three? They're hormones. So a hormone is basically a molecule that gets released by a small group of cells within a certain part in your body, and that group of cells is called a gland. The hormone, or the molecule that gets released, it travels through the circulation to act at distant sites to cause its effect. So in this case, epinephrine or adrenaline is released from the adrenal gland. Insulin and glucagon are both released from the pancreas. Insulin from beta cells and glucagon from alpha cells. Insulin, as you probably heard, people that have diabetes, particularly type 1 diabetes, have to inject insulin into their bodies, and that is to decrease the blood glucose within your circulation. Now, if you're trying to run away, you need fuel in your blood. You need to increase the amount of glucose that's circulating within your body, and that's where glucagon comes in. Glucagon will result in an increase in glucose, an increase in fatty acids, and an increase in amino acids. So here you've got all these fuels ready for you to act, to run, or to fight. Now, the second thing that the hypothalamus does as a result of a particular stressor is to increase the amount of cortisol that's circulating within your blood. Now, there are several hormones that get secreted before we get to the release of cortisol, which is released also from the adrenal gland. And so I won't go into that because I want to keep it simple. So we'll increase cortisol. And cortisol is going to cause this as well. So it's going to increase your glucose, it's going to increase the fatty acids in the circulation and the amino acids. The difference in the way that cortisol does this is that it does it in our limbs. So it mobilizes amino acids and fatty acids from our limbs. It breaks down that, in other words, it breaks down the fat and protein within our limbs and puts it into the circulation. In the presence of cortisol, the reason I say it mobilizes is because the fat, if not used, can be mobilized to be stored in around your waist. And if this starts to happen, you end up looking like a lemon on sticks because you're losing your protein from your arms and you're depositing the fat that you haven't used in your waist. Now, this is seen in extreme cases where, for example, a person might have a tumor in the adrenal glands and they're secreting a whole load of cortisol. So this is a little picture of what it would look like. Okay, so the lemon on sticks look. So it would be an increase in cortisol would be promoting that figure. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go and look like that, but it's taking you towards that way. Alright, the other reason that cortisol is so important, it's usually seen as the bad guy, but it's actually a good guy, and it's particularly if you were in an accident or something like that. You want cortisol there. The reason so is because it's a permissive hormone, and what cortisol does, you need it in order for epinephrine to work well, and you also need it in order for another hormone, which is called vasopressin, to work well. So vasopressin. And finally, the third thing that cortisol does, it makes you hungry. So it increases your appetite for palatable foods. So foods that are full of simple sugars that are very unhealthy for you. So increase, let's use the purple, increase in appetite. If we have an increase in appetite, we eat more, and we are more likely to increase weight. The third thing that the hypothalamus does as a result of a stressor is it increases the release of vasopressin from the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is just below the hypothalamus, kind of in the center of your brain. The vasopressin will travel through the circulation. It will act on the kidneys to increase the amount of water and salt that's retained within the body. So it will increase salt, which is sodium chloride, and water. Now, if you're retaining water and salt, you're going to be weighing more, so your weight is going to be greater. In summary, if you reduce the stressor, you're going to retain less water. Just to touch back on that, you retain more water in case that you lose blood in an accident, so that you have more circulating, a greater circulatory volume, so that it allows to perhaps last a little bit longer before you get help or before you bandage it. You're going to perhaps not affect your appetite so much, and you're not going to be tending towards that shape either. Okay, how are you going to reduce stress? Well, there are many ways to reduce stress. Exercise is particularly good, and the reason it is because you've just mobilized a whole bunch of fuels. They're ready to go. They're in the circulation. So if you go for a run, go for a swim, it has to be a sport that you like. You want it to be an enjoyable experience. The other thing, there's so many other benefits associated with exercise, including an increase in the endorphins being released, which will make you feel good and improve your general well-being in life, as well as inadvertently slowly losing perhaps weight. The other thing that you could do might be meditation. When you do meditation, you are stopping thoughts, depending which type of meditation you're doing. And if you stop thought, you're not going to be thinking about the bad experience you've had during the day. If you're not experiencing the bad experience, you're not going to be triggering the stress response. And at least it gives your body a break in the meantime. The other thing that might be worthwhile doing is perhaps getting a coach or a counselor or a friend to perhaps dive into the underlying issue behind the stress. Other things that you might like to do might be talk. I mentioned talk to a friend, but you might like to play an instrument. You might like to sing. You might like to dance. You might like to have a hot bath, read a book. There are so many things that you can do, and it's individual to you. You need to decide what works for you. Okay, with that, I will leave you for today. And I hope this was helpful to you, and I will see you when we talk about step 2 in losing weight in a compassionate manner. See ya!